Why, hello! Welcome to dinner. You are a little bit early, so you sit there and watch me cut carrot. I am making family goulash tonight. This secret recipe passed down through ages of Constantin women. I cannot tell you what all of the ingredients are, but you see many ingredients here. Secret ingredient is secret. I can tell you, however, story about secret ingredient. Would you like to hear a story about secret ingredient? It's a very good story. Yeah? Okay. So, I'll tell you what. I put these carrots over here so they do not run away. So many carrots. And I tell you a story about secret ingredient. Great Aunt Drucilla never liked being on the road. She preferred to stay at home in the family camp deep in the Carpatmania Mountains. But do not let that fool you into thinking she did not work. She did all of the cooking for the family, always remembering everyone's favorite dishes and knowing what they needed to stay healthy. She was short and fat with large arms that she would wrap around you in the way that only a loving family member can, bringing comfort in times of pain and unconditional love. Drucilla always knew what you needed and could work her magic like no other, but she did not make potions. Drucilla conjured her power in food. If you had an injury, she baked a healing cake. If you were lonely, she could bake you a bread to make you irresistible. There was a recipe for everything. When the first plague swept through the continent, people were suffering everywhere. They were dying on the streets, starving in their towns, and afraid to leave their homes. But the plague never affected the Constantin home camp. No, their children were kept healthy and fed. Drucilla even made small cakes to take on the caravan, not to sell, but to give away to the hungry and the sick. These small cakes were seen as a gift from above to the destitute, who soon recovered. But to the non-believers, they were always explained away as a fraud. Gypsy mumbo-jumbo. As hard as times were, and as hungry as most people had become, some people simply could not believe. When the plague swept through the nearby city of Buzău, the caravan was on the road. Most of the family was gone except for the children, old Uncle Petrov, who never left the camp, and Great Aunt Drucilla. Snow fell lightly on that dark evening as the family sat around the campfire eating their dinner, ladled from the cauldron hanging above it. Seeing a soldier approach from the dark, Petrov invited him to the fire, but it was almost immediately obvious that this was no lone man. At least 10 soldiers were behind him in formation. They did not speak. They simply took Drucilla, bound her arms, and took her away in a wagon. There was nothing the children could do but watch them disappear as the wagon rolled away in the snow. Drucilla was taken to the local magistrate's house and ushered into a large dining hall, empty except for the magistrate, who was having dinner by himself. Plates of meats and sausages were laid out in front of this fat man, far more than a whole family could eat. The air was heavy with the scent of anise and paprika and animal fat. He was gorging on pork and mutton, on breads and thick stews. He did not look up as Drucilla was untied and sat in a chair directly across from him. She was not offered a plate. Rather, she was held in her seat by the soldier's hands resting upon her shoulders. The magistrate downed a very large stein of beer and belched loudly. Eyes focused on a roasted pig's head in front of him, he spoke to Drucilla while chewing. Yes, he knew her reputation. Yes, he knew that her family was gone, and that the children would not survive in the camp long without her. And yes, he knew about her dark magic. He did not like the gypsies, and would like nothing more than to have her killed. But the plague was uncontrollable at this point. He ordered Drucilla to make enough of her magic pies to feed the 50 or so leaders of the town and keep them safe from the disease. If she did not, the magistrate would personally see her burned at the stake, and what was left would be fed to the wolves immediately. Drucilla had no choice. She agreed. She said that she had all of the ingredients she needed in the camp and that she could have it ready by the next day. The only thing she would need would be for the magistrate to pierce the pie crusts himself to seal the deal. The magistrate agreed and said he would arrive at the camp the next day at noon to do his task, then collect the pies and leave. Never looking up, the magistrate waved his hand, and Drucilla was tied back up, thrown back in the wagon, and taken home. The next day, the magistrate's fancy carriage would wind up the mountain path and into the mountains, finally stopping in front of the gypsy camp. Drucilla was waiting out front while the children played behind her. The magistrate stepped out of the carriage and onto the pebbled stone ground. With disgust, he held a lace handkerchief to his nose. Drucilla welcomed him and directed him to come into the kitchen tent. The magistrate followed her, remarking on the crude furniture, the tattered tents, the rough metalwork. But when she opened the flap into the kitchen tent, set out before them were 50 small white cakes, fully baked and dusted with sugar. The magistrate licked his lips, then picked up one of the cakes and took a big bite. Chewing devilishly, he savored the sweetness in his mouth. It was the finest tasting cake he had ever tasted. Moaning in sweet bliss, he felt something drip on his chest. Opening his eyes, he found that the cake was leaking a dark red filling onto his lacy shirt. The taste in his mouth turned bitter almost immediately, and he began to choke. Coughing, he swung around to see Drucilla still standing there smiling, with a crude meat mallet raised above her head. The very fancy carriage rolled out of the mountains and back to the village, stopping at the town fountain. Hundreds of small pies were unloaded. They were given to everyone in the village, the rich, the poor, the dying, the healthy. Drucilla stood there proudly as people hastily ate the pies. The smell of anise and paprika and animal fat filled the air. Within days, the village was free of the plague. The sick were healed. Everybody rejoiced. Great Aunt Drucilla was profusely thanked for her pies and always questioned about the delicious recipe. When asked what was in them, she would always say, "Oh, swine." Drucilla taught us that we are supposed to take care of everyone, regardless of social status. That is why everyone is welcome to our table for dinner. And if you are unhappy with dinner, we would love to have you for dinner tomorrow.